There was an article by Joshua Rogers that appeared online recently. It's been generating a lot of discussion. And, this discussion's been going on for decades. It's the ending of the Chronicles of Narnia. It's one of the more shocking, probably the most, for me, shocking part of the series. By the way, if you have not read The Last Battle, huge spoilers ahead about the ending of the Chronicles of Narnia. Please go read The Last Battle right now if you haven't. Susan not being present at the end of The Last Battle. You totally don't see it coming. I really relate to the author of this article, where it seemed like it took him a while to get his head around all the implications of this. Wait a second. They all die? That was the big thing. It took me a while to really get my head around. They all die? Basically, everyone dies in the train accident, except Susan. And that's the point the article is really about. That, wow, if you think about this, Susan was probably been distancing herself from her family by, choosing to not believe in Narnia's existence anymore. Oh, yeah, it's all silly, it's all games. And all of a sudden, everyone she loves is dead in a horrible train accident. Like, what would this have done to her? Where does she go from there? And the article is kind of making the case that she must have come back around. She could not continue denying all her time in Narnia after something like that. So what's happening with Susan? Well, since I think it's misinterpreted so much, J.K. Rowling says that, Susan basically gets left out of the afterlife because she discovers sex. Philip Pullman says that, well, she's just growing up. Why should she be punished for that? So first off, let's start by just reading it. Let's see exactly what Lewis wrote.
Has not your majesty 2 sisters? Where is Queen Susan? My sister Susan, answered Peter shortly and gravely, is no longer a friend of Narnia. Yes, said Eustace, and whenever you've tried to get her to come and talk about Narnia, or do anything about Narnia, she says, what wonderful memories you have. Fancy you're still thinking about all those funny games we used to play when we were children. Oh, Susan, said Jill. She's interested in nothing nowadays except nylons and lipstick and invitations. She always was a jolly sight too keen on being grown up. Grown up indeed, said the Lady Polly. I wish she would grow up. She wasted all her school time wanting to be the age she is now, and she'll waste all the rest of her life trying to stay that age. Her whole idea is to race onto the silliest time of one's life as quick as she can, and then stop there as long as she can.
What? What? I still, even now rereading the book, I'm still shocked by it and almost don't see it coming, even though I've already read the book. What? Why? How? A lot of things happened in The Last Battle that you didn't think were allowed to happen in Narnia. Let me just go ahead and skip to what's not happening here. First off, Susan doesn't get left out. We don't know what's going to happen with Susan. We don't see the end of her story in The Last Battle. We don't know. Her family's dead. We don't know what's going to happen with Susan. Philip Pullman's point that she basically, she's just growing up. No, she's not. It says that in the book, that Susan's not growing up. She thinks she is. She thinks that, I've moved away and beyond all these silly things, on past all that, and sort of denying its value and denying not just Narnia's existence, but I think what it stands for. What Polly's talking about, I think you just can't deny. You see that in our world of racing to get to the silliest point in your life and then trying to stay there. And it's not going to last. This life is not going to last. And your 20s and 30s are even shorter. They're not going to last either. Ultimately, that's Susan's downfall. It's fixating on things that ultimately have no lasting value. It's a theme we see throughout the series, like Reepicheep's longing of wanting something beyond the world's edge. And Caspian, no, I wish I could have lived in the old days with the old Narnians. Shasta believing that, just knowing deep in his bones that he was made for something more than this. Susan's also become like other characters we see in the Chronicles of Narnia, especially Miraz and Lady of the Green Kirtle, who say that what you see in front of you, this is all that there is. And she's fixating on just what she can see and focusing on nylons and lipstick and just very temporary pleasures that don't necessarily have lasting value. They're not bad. They are not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that's what she's fixating on, and that's a trap because it can't last. So, is there hope for Susan? That's one of the big questions every reader is kind of left with. Obviously, if it was supposed to be clear, Lewis would have made it clear. He obviously wanted this to be ambiguous and not answered and let each reader kind of decide for themselves what they thought. So here's what I think. This is what my imagination kind of suggests about Susan. I just can't help but go right back to the beginning of the series, right back to almost kind of before the beginning of the series, Lewis's opening dedication to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. My dear Lucy, I wrote this story for you, but when I began it, I had not realized that girls grow quicker than books. As a result, you are already too old for fairy tales, and by the time it is printed and bound, you will be older still. But someday, you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. This is something I really relate to in my own life. I feel like with superheroes, for example, growing up, I loved Superman, loved his powers, loved the fact that he could fly and had a red cape. Loved the fact that he was an alien, like basically a fairy tale mythical god. Thought it was cool. Then right about in my teens, I thought, oh, Superman's goody two-shoes. He's stupid and shallow and one-dimensional. And now, starting at about college years, I guess, I started to rediscover Superman and fall in love with him again. I guess I'll go on a little tangent here since the Batman vs. Superman movie is coming out, which I'm not terribly excited about. But Superman's kind of the only superhero that I really wish did exist. I'm really glad there isn't actually an angry, psycho billionaire dressing up as a bat, going around and solving the world's problems in the way that he wants to, dishing out his version of justice. Love the character of Batman. Glad he doesn't exist. But anyway, back to Susan. So yeah, I do believe that someday Susan will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. And I can't believe that, especially like the article points out, especially after that traumatic experience, that she could just go on as she was before. So in my imagination, Susan will come around again. But like I said, if Lewis wanted it to be clear, it would be clear, and it's not. It's left for us to kind of talk about. So what do you think? Post a comment below. Go to my Facebook page and post something there. What do you think happened to Susan, and why do you think Lewis chose to do that with Susan? If Susan was just there at the end, nobody would have questioned it. It would not have seemed weird at all. Why did he bother even having it at all is a fascinating question. So let the discussion continue.